Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 9th, 2019 meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission. The first item of business, is there anyone who wants to say anything that's not on the agenda? Anyone want us to talk about anything that's not on this agenda? Okay, next we have approval of minutes for April 25th. Any discussion? Ed, they're okay?
We're okay.
All right, motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Well, I wasn't here, so.
I wasn't here either.
Second. Okay, all in favor? 1, 2.
Abstain. I was not here.
Yeah, you was here.
Were you here last meeting?
Pardon?
Were you here?
Voting on the minutes, were you here for the last meeting?
Okay, 303.
All right, you're
You
good.
just made it, thank you, Gail. Okay. Okay. Next is, we're on item now 4A. Notice is given, the commission will hold a meeting during which time we have a request for determination of applicability. It was filed by Nicholas Barrett. The commission will take information related to proposed lawn drain improvements within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. The work was located at 33 Westwood Street in Burlington, and thereafter may issue a determination of applicability. The application is being heard under state law, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and our local Burlington bylaw, Article 14. The application materials available in the Conservation Commission office. Hi there. You get the guest of honor to sit up here, okay? And then you get to talk about 1.5 feet away from the microphone, so we'll pick it up and so forth. Okay, yeah, you're welcome to introduce yourself, and if you want to say anything, you can, as much or as little as you want.
Okay, I feel like I had almost all of you over yesterday, so nice to see you again. And thanks for stopping by, because I think it's important to see the project that we're talking about. So I'm the homeowner at 33 Westwood Street, and basically we're just trying to install some drainage in the lawn.
Right.
Because essentially if we have, it's unusable the way it was. If you go out there, you get muddy or wet or whatever, and basically part of the plan, for moving to Burlington in the first place was my wife and I thought we could basically, sort of be that glue between our families. We have some aging grandparents. We used to throw big family parties and stuff, and we're kind of taking the reins for that. So basically we wanted to be able to, when we bought the house, basically part of the idea, if you will, is to be able to have people over, use the yard, enjoy the yard and stuff.
Sure,
like that.
understood,
So that
yes. You are surrounded by wetlands.
I am, yeah, I didn't really know that, but yes, seems to be the
Yes, all right. Okay, so let's see where we go from here. John, would you make some comments?
Sure, so I'll just give you some history. I got a report from the building department that there was soil moving activity going on at Westwood Street, trucks bringing in dirt and whatnot. So I went out and investigated, and the project described by the applicant was well underway. They had dug a lot of material out, and they were putting new material in. So as far as grade goes, the project wasn't a change in grade, it was just a change in the material. So it was pretty much of a mess at the time, and they were in the middle of the project, and I advised the applicant that he could proceed with the project at his own risk. I didn't want to shut it down because it was kind of a mess, and I figured it'd be better to get the site, the hole filled back in, rather than waiting 2 weeks for the Conservation Commission to review it. So that's the history. Then the commission visited the site yesterday, and it's clear that there are wetlands on either side of the property. There's a large wetland at the back, and the outlet for that wetland appears to be along the 2 property lines, going down towards Westwood Street, and there's catch basins town drains down there. So in both cases, the water flows down the property lines and goes into the street drainage system. I don't know if there's any other outlets to the wetland, but those are two overflows where the wetland overflows from. In talking to the applicant yesterday during the site visit, it's apparent that the area that he put the or the drainage material in was previously a treed area, and put in a fence beyond that area. So it's totally possible that that was a wetland at the time that work was done.
So you have a feeling for what resource areas are involved?
Bordering vegetated wetlands.
Is there a stream?
I don't think there's a stream. There's no streams on the maps anyway. We didn't walk all the way back there, but there's no mapped streams.
All right, so there's not a regulated riverfront or anything like that?
No, just BVW.
BVW, okay, all right. Okay. Well, maybe we should start with initial comments, and then we have to kind of decide what to do, okay? And it's not immediately clear. That's not immediately obvious, so let's just talk about it for a few minutes. We'll see what people have to say. Let me start with the people who were there first. I think that would be a better, smarter idea. Ed?
I think probably the biggest thing that stood out was dealing with the fence itself. More so on the right-hand side as you face the house to the right. Pretty much just basically sitting at the edge of water. That concerned me in a big way. And it kind of surrounded the whole area with a similar thing as far as how much buffer zone are we really dealing with here where that fence was concerned. And the shed itself too, kind of sitting where it's basically in that buffer zone. Those are the two things I think we noticed yesterday that kind of stood out for me specifically.
Okay. All right, let's, Bill, you were there.
Yes, it appears to me the applicant's trying to make this property into something that it isn't, which is dry land. And that more than likely, not only buffer zone, but actual resource area has been compromised by cutting trees, by, regrading somewhat, by constructing the shed that's there and the fence. Those appear to be, to me, actually in the resource area itself, especially if you look at the neighboring lot and you see that the wetland comes down another 15, 20 feet beyond the back fence. So most likely it's a continuous line for your property where the wetland was at one time. One of the things that you have done that makes the situation worse is you cut the trees. The trees are what suck up a lot of water from the ground, hold them in the tree itself, respire them into the air. Hundreds, if not thousands of gallons a day are taken out of the ground by trees. By cutting the trees, you have exacerbated the problem, added more water to your property. I saw evidence of filling outside the fence where you're, dumping your leaves or lawn clippings and stuff like that. That's filling additional wetlands, that's causing more water to come onto your property. So those type of things are not helping yourself by doing that. If we actually did soil tests to perform where the wetland boundary is, I don't think you'd like the answer. So, I don't know what we can do at this point except try to talk about, maybe reclaiming some of that wetland property, moving the fence in and creating a bigger boundary to what is clearly wetland, just touching the fence all along the back and, as Ed pointed out, on the right side as well. And maybe planting some trees. I don't know. But that's what I saw.
All right. For the other commissioners that weren't there, you're welcome to make any comments, but this particular project will be difficult to say too much. This is one you almost have to see in order to, anyone want to make?
So I did see the pictures that Eileen sent, and.
Yeah, they were helpful.
that she
You're welcome
sent.
to comment.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So it was pretty obvious from the pictures that, there had been wetland filling, that the shed was very close, if not in the wetland, that there was gravel behind the fence, that you can see the wetland going right up to the fence. So, I mean, this, and then there was, John witness Phil brought in that, so that clearly there's a violation of, in terms of disturbing, filling a wetland. And, yeah, I agree with Bill that, in trying to solve your problem, you've made it worse, and potentially made it worse, not just for you, but for other people, because the wetland serves purpose in terms of absorbing stormwater, excess water, and so forth. So, so I think, in part, one of the things that needs to be done is to do some restoration. But I also think this is a violation.
John, is there any grade changes? Did they change anything?
So there weren't any grade changes on this most recent project, but there is a retaining wall out there, so presumably you did add some fill when you cut the trees?
Yep.
So,
For those who weren't there, there was, I think part of the attempt to rectify some of the situation was the homeowner removed a bunch of soil, put down some underground piping, hoping to transport or at least store some of the water and make it less.
Give a void, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then refilled it. So that's where some of the fill came in. He took steel oil away, put these pipes down, and then added more.
Let's, maybe we should take a step back,
Did
just.
I just had a
Jen, go
question,
ahead.
I just had a question in regards to, is this on one of the maps in town? Like, did you know that this was a wetland area?
no, it's not a mapped well.
So it's not surveyed on, like when you bought them, there was no,
Wasn't
Disclosure.
like when I bought it, nobody.
There was no
said
disclosure.
anything, disclosed it or said anything to me. Really, the first thing I knew about it was when John came to.
Surprise.
I was just curious about that.
Okay. Indra, do you want to make any comments at all?
No, I just asked
Okay.
about the grading.
All right, I thought we should take a step back a bit, a minute. You have a resource area called bordering vegetative wetland, and what the commission is sworn to do is we enforce two things. One, a state law, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and our bylaw, which is mostly the same jurisdiction, but has a little bit additional jurisdiction in it as well. And what that means is that wetlands are not supposed to be filled, altered, or drained in any way. And the normal circumstance is that we're looking at projects that are not as close as you are, but are some distance away from the wetlands, and then we put conditions on them so that what has happened here doesn't happen. That's the way, that's the normal, what we're supposed to do. In this situation, freshwater vegetative wetlands is probably one of the most, there's a number of resource areas, but that particular resource area we're dealing with is probably, from a habitat point of view, one of the most important resource areas that we protect. One of the ways that we protect it is that both in the wetland and very close to the wetland, we would not allow tree cutting because that provides the shade, it takes up the water, it slows the floodwaters down, as Bill said, it protects the wetland, so it functions as a habitat for the various kind of animals and stuff that use it for their home and so forth. And so the question, and then the bylaw that we have extends the jurisdiction a little bit. We have, people are not allowed, under our regulations, we have regulations, and we have to follow them, are not allowed to even disturb the area within 20 feet of the border of the vegetative wetlands. So under normal circumstances, the project would have been asked to at least hold back 20 feet from the edge of the wetland. Now, in this particular circumstance, doesn't happen very often, but we don't know, you've altered the backyard a lot in an effort to make it better. You have a fence that may be in the wetland, we don't know where the wetland was exactly. On the sides, the wetland comes up to a certain portion, and you've created some stone and so forth. They were very aggressive with putting stone in there and so forth, which is also not allowed. So we're in a situation that in order to really assess where we are, we almost have to know, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but wouldn't it be useful to know where the line of the wetland is so we know what we're dealing with? I don't know if it can be restored, but somehow shouldn't that be one of the first things? That in order to know where we are with the project, should we know where the edge of the bordering vegetated wetland is?
Yes, it will be difficult for wetland scientists to do because of the amount of fill and the change of the soil, but yes. I mean, they could probably go to either, the far ends of the property where the material wasn't changed as much, and then just draw a line across or something like that. But yes,
So maybe-
without knowing where the wetland was, that's the first step. You need to know where the wetland boundary was.
Right. So there's no use even talking about what should we do here, or how do we sort of make this partially right. I'm not suggesting you take out the pipes and take out the soil and all that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we almost have to see a little sketch of the property, which probably have, and with a professional somehow drawing the line and saying, this is probably, with the best information we have, where the wetland line was. And then we'll look at the 20-foot no disturb zone to see where that brings us, and then we'll just have to have a discussion with you at that point.
I mean, the only comment I'll add is, I wasn't making any attempt to expand my little, empire over there. Basically, I just took the last, where the grass ended before, and stopped there. I mean, is there a part of me that would love to go back to the property line and all that? Of course. But I mean, I just said, hey, just don't wanna, basically, and the only reason I knew to do that or thought to do that is was trying not to screw over my neighbors by pushing that water onto their property or something like that, And I asked them, I also told them in advance of this project, like what I was doing, and made sure all that was okay with them. So told them how far back I was going and everything. But to your point, they're not wetlands experts either, right? So they don't know.
Right.
They don't know anything.
Well,
about
any
it. But I mean,
information,
that's what I'm saying. I wasn't trying to expand the empire over there.
we're not saying that either.
Yeah.
We're not really saying that. And we often have people who are not familiar with, they're familiar with going to a building department, but they're not familiar with necessarily, some people are not familiar with going to the Conservation Commission to check on the status of, make sure there's no restraints on them. No, we understand that.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So your rear fence now was previously, that was disturbed all the way to that point previously with
Yeah, that was-
a lawn or attempted lawn and stuff?
Yeah, there was lawn there, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right, okay. I mean, my observation of the yard was in that far right corner, it looked like the fence is actually in the wetlands there. I mean, I think, yes, that's what Ed was saying, so I think that's what it is. So, but we can't be sure of some of the other points of, the least we can say is very close to the wetlands. So, John, would you say the next step, in other words, to carry this conversation further, we need to get that information, is that?
Correct.
All right, so how would he go about doing this? Do you have some
So, I
instruction?
mean, we could provide you a list of some wetland scientists who do work in the area, or you could just look up on the internet, either way. But we can send you a list, but you can pick, whoever you want. You should check around for price and whatnot.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want, this is not necessarily relevant to going forward, but the pipes you put in were to create a void space to hold some water.
Yeah, there's similar, like I had basically looked up, I'd seen some projects like in town over the years. They have these like big barrels or half barrels type of thing. They call them like a recharger system.
Is that what you put in, rechargers?
No, it isn't, but basically was just trying to do something like that, where like a parking lot
Right,
drains and
okay,
this
you were,
thing holds
you were,
it.
you were trying to hold some water in some hollow tubes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I get it. Yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. I just wanted to ask, so the trees, they were inside where the fence is now, is that correct? Or,
Yeah, there were two, they're relatively small, like 15 feet high or something, 10, 15
so-
feet,
so
relatively
you'll
small.
have the trunk? The stumps, I guess, right? Or were those dug out, the stumps?
Yeah,
The stumps
They're
are-
missing.
They're not there.
yeah, no, yeah, it's
Okay.
completely filled in with new grass being planted. and
Yeah, I
all.
saw that, yeah.
Yeah. So we probably have the aerial photos to look, to see what we can see as well?
Yeah, I mean, but the tree cover makes it a little difficult to see.
Okay.
We did look at it, and we'll take another look at it. We can actually print out some aerial photos for the next time this is on the agenda.
All right. So it looks, so the point I was going to make is, it looks like you kept your yard relatively flat. And you buried those pipes. If the problem you have if it's close to the same elevation, is you essentially have groundwater. You might have a situation, I don't know if this is true, but it might have a situation where a lot of it is wetting back because you have groundwater coming up. There's probably very little pitch to those pipes because you didn't change the elevation, which is good in some sense. But I'm not sure even the pipes you put in are going to, I mean, when groundwater comes up like that, it's like an infinite source.
Yeah, it's like pushing.
It's like burying a pipe in the ocean, in the bottom of the ocean, expecting it's gonna lower the ocean a little bit. It may or may not, I can't say for sure whether it will work or not.
Sure.
But I would not be surprised if I see you a year from now and you say, those pipes didn't work too well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so.
Be some-
So I guess the way we'll leave this is we have to ask you to hire somebody to draw a line, and it might be as simple as them looking at there's so much alteration, they might just simply look at the neighboring property and say that this is the best we can estimate where it is.
Okay.
Okay?
So logistically, we should continue this then,
I think so,
yeah.
yeah.
Doors.
What's that?
We want those sealed up.
What's that?
That's access point to the wetlands.
We can't do anything yet until we get this
Would you
information.
like me to email you a list of people? Okay.
All right, so we'll put this on the agenda, and when you have that information, you'll come back in the agenda, I guess we'll continue the discussion. I think unfortunately, that's the best we can do at this point.
Okay,
All right?
that's good. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks a lot for coming in. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, next, we're on item 4B. I didn't ask, is there anybody in the audience at all for that at 33 Westwood? I didn't think so, but I just wanted to double check. All right, I should have asked. All right. Notice is given, the commission will hold a public meeting during which time we have another request for determination of applicability. This one was filed by Jason Mina, and it is to take information related to some proposed tree clearing and landscaping activities within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands. The work is located at 1 Ganley Drive in Burlington, and the application is being heard under both the State Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. And again, the material is available for public review in the Conservation's office. Good evening.
I am not Jason. I'm Jason's wife, Amy, obviously.
Yes, we met you.
Yes.
We did meet you yesterday, so nice to see you.
Nice to see you again.
All right, so you're welcome to summarize as much or as little as you'd like.
So yeah, thank you all for having me, and it was nice to meet several of you yesterday. There were a lot of faces, so I'm pretty sure I met most of you, but I'm not sure exactly how many. I also wanted to apologize for not staking out where the fence would go. That was my misunderstanding. I had thought that the stumps were the primary concern, so I'm glad that we were able to kind of walk the perimeter, and I hope that gave you guys a good idea of what we're hoping to do. So as you saw yesterday, the trees have already been cut, which we also wanted to take responsibility for. We did not realize we needed a permit. We were told by the tree company, oh, it's fine. That's our mistake. We should have done our due diligence on that. So moving beyond that, it's just our hope to essentially enclose as much of the yard as we can, so we can use it for, we have 2 dogs, we get a fair amount of coyote traffic back there, essentially to use it for, future family planning as well. We're not looking to change any grading at all. It's essentially just to create as much lawn space and then enclose it as we can.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. John or Eileen, would you like to comment?
Well, just to say that I can't remember how we exactly found out about it. I think we spoke to your contractor.
Yes.
So, and we discovered at that time that the trees were already down, I think, and John and I both.
When we realized we didn't realize it was a problem until then, so.
So we both went out and we took a look, and we realized that there was wetland off the back of the property, and in fact, there's also a vernal pool behind the property as well. It's hard to tell exactly how far it is because we didn't measure it, but vernal pool itself is a resource for 100 feet around the water. So we know that it definitely comes close to the property. That's it, trees and fence.
Okay. So just to clarify, the commission, under its bylaw, has the vernal pool itself as a resource area and considers the habitat as a resource area, the first 100 feet. And then any project that occurs beyond the second 100, in the second 100 feet, is reviewable by the commission. And most of your yard is, that you want to fence in, most of it is in the second 100, even though it might be close, some of it might be at the beginning of the first 100. Is that how you would see it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, Eileen, do you have any recommendations?
Well, I would recommend that they measure the 100 feet from the high water mark, so we have a clear idea of where the vernal pool ends, and I would suggest perhaps keeping work out of that as far as possible, and maybe doing some planting to mitigate for the trees that were lost inside that area.
You mean outside the fence, but
Yes,
outside the fence?
yes.
Right, okay. All right, okay. All right. Indra, any comments on this one?
No, nothing.
Gail, anything?
So yeah, I think that tree planting is important in terms of maintaining the quality of the vernal pool. And there was you haven't done any grading or anything, just
Correct.
tree removal, okay. How many trees were taken down?
A fair amount. I don't know if it's on the initial form. What would you estimate? A dozen,
At least.
at least,
Between
within that area.
maybe 15. It was quite a lot of stumps.
We
A
did
variety
make
of
an effort to
sizes.
keep some of the healthier trees. They advised us a little bit on which trees were healthy, which ones weren't.
So you left one big healthy one inside the fence area, which is
There were, yeah.
appreciated, at
Yeah.
least one that I saw, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill, any comment?
Just so you understand the resource area that you abut, a vernal pool is certified based on the type of animal that lives there. And it's the place where certain salamanders, certain frogs, they only breed in vernal pools. They don't live in the vernal pool, they breed there, and they live on the surrounding upland, which is why 100 feet from it must be protected, because all those animals, that's their habitat, not just the body of water. So that's why it's more restrictive than if it were just a normal wetland that didn't have these protected animals in it. So, you could, sometimes in the early spring and a rainy night, you can go down there and find, I'm sure, all kinds of cool things going on with salamanders mating and stuff like that. They call it the big night. It is if you're a salamander.
Already happened.
It's already happened.
Too late. It's
Okay,
easier.
Bill?
And we could,
Keep going, Bill, you're doing fine.
while we were standing there, we could hear frogs and toads and stuff, and their calls. So it's a cool area to have near you, and I certainly appreciate that you're willing to protect it and help us respect
much
it,
so,
so.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ed?
Nothing more, but it was kind of comical when we first got there. But we were kind of staring at the two trees almost in the middle, so now how's this house gonna fit in there? No, there's no house going on.
Yeah.
But yet, your ledge and whatnot, I think you're just talking about, it's gonna be landscaped around it, lawn, whatever you're gonna do.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Jen, nothing further. Okay, so we have to decide what to do. One thing I'm looking for comments on is that the commission could, for example, just say that we will, you and in concert with our administrator and assistant administrator would define where the 100-foot is that? And then the fence line would mirror that line. It looked like that one corner, the fence line you might have to sort of cut kitty corner across it or something like that. You weren't, most of the area you want to fence in was not within that first 100. That would be one thing. Does anybody have comment on that?
No, that
As a
makes
plan?
sense. That makes sense.
That's fine.
Okay, so do you feel comfortable that between the homeowner and you folks, you can pretty much determine where that is?
Absolutely.
So there's no need to hire a professional to do anything like that, is there? No, okay. All right, does that sound good to you?
Sure, so essentially make sure that the fence stays out of that 100-foot range.
Right, so the fence would at least follow the line, and you would come to an agreement with them where the 100-foot is, and that way you'd just basically stake out where that line is, and you'd be all set.
And then additionally, will we have guidance on what trees to replant in that area?
Yes. Again, do you have any guidance to give here, or does the draft decision say anything about trees?
It does.
It does. Okay, so the best thing to do then, it looks like we can close this out. We have a document to review. We can discuss if there's anything not clear. And then we'll vote, and you'll be out of here.
I
Okay?
have one more question, though,
Yes.
just for my curiosity. Who was the tree company that said there was no concern?
It was called Iron Tree.
I don't know them.
They said they did a fair amount of work in Burlington.
Doesn't mean
but
they
not
do it right.
often.
Doesn't mean they do
It
it.
doesn't mean it right, yeah, exactly, and I did speak with them.
All right, is there anybody in the audience for this one? This one is at 1 Ganley Drive. No. Okay, so let's please review the document.
Okay. The applicant proposed to remove several trees in order to extend the lawn by approximately 35 feet and install a fence around the property, including the new lawn. The project will be approximately 300 feet from a vernal pool, which is located off the property. The work was located within the 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland and close to a vernal pool located to the southeast of the property. The proposed work was more than 50 feet from the BVW. The commission is not making findings as to the exact boundaries of the wetland resources on the area, and then the conditions are on the next page. A lot of them are standard. It's saying that the decision is only for the work outlined above, nothing else. The fence shall be no closer than 100 feet from the high water line of the vernal pool, and this shall be marked on the property by conservation staff or in consultation with staff. Applicant shall plant 6 native trees within the wetland buffer zone and/or vernal pool resource as mitigation for the removed trees. The location of the trees to be planted shall be determined in consultation with the conservation administrator. Trees shall be native species with the specific species approved by the conservation administrator. No additional work other than planting of native trees or shrubs shall be submitted without the prior approval of the Conservation Commission or staff. And then the other ones are standard, just about the work in general as you're going forward. It's about you need to keep the roadways clean, make sure you're not filling or grading additional to what we discussed on the property. Don't dump landscape materials into the wetlands. You shouldn't be using pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides within 100 feet of wetlands or vernal pool. And it also just says that we have the right to just inspect the progress as it's going along, and non-compliance shall be deemed a violation.
Okay, any comment on the findings or the conditions? How did it sound to you? You okay with this?
Sounds very agreeable. My only question is, so within the area that the fence would be, which is 100 feet, is it preferable for you all that we remove stumps or grind them? Is there a better or worse option? Does that change,
Anybody have a comment on that?
or does that even matter if it's
I don't think you want to do anything outside the fence.
correct, but
Right,
within the
but-
fence?
But I don't think they really had anything that was outside the fence. I didn't put that because I
knew
thought
the
it was
fence.
reasonable in their, outside the 100-foot to
Leave them?
let them have their lawn.
What?
No, if it's inside the fence.
Oh, it's
they
inside the
grind.
fence, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it
no,
better
yeah,
to proceed
I don't,
away, or-
yeah.
We would like stumps to be removed, but we understand, or sorry, to be left, but we understand that you would probably prefer to take them out so that you can just have a lawn.
We weren't sure if, because I know you can grind them or you can remove them. We didn't know if one was better than the other.
Oh.
If grinding leaves some of the root system, or, you know.
It just decays.
Don't really have a
Yeah.
preference.
I think it's mostly your choice, and I would base it on cost.
Probably, it depends what you have there now, it's probably more disruptive to have them removed.
To take them up, yeah.
That's what we were, okay.
Grinding might be
Yeah,
simpler.
everything sounds reasonable, so.
All right, okay. So if there's nothing further, could I have a motion to issue a negative conditional determination under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 in the State Wetlands Protection Act for the property at 1 Ganley Drive?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Looks like 6-0-0. We're all set.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Should I stick around, or should I?
Oh, you can go. Unless you want to stay.
Run.
Yeah. Can I just say, that's a draft. I mean, it's not going to change, but we'll send you out the official document next week. I should have written draft on it. John just pointed out to me.
All right. Very good. Have a good evening.
Thank you, too.
Okay, item 4C has been withdrawn. The proposed installation of a ground pool at 15 Marjorie Road. Now we're on item 5. We
Can I
have...
ask one question about
Yes.
Marjorie Road? I did watch the video
Yes.
from last meeting, and she mentioned that there was filling going on behind her. Did you follow up on that at all yet, or?
I drove by, but I wasn't, I didn't want to just walk on the guy's property without permission, and I just haven't gone back yet.
Okay. All right, I'm curious what's going on. It sounded from her description that it was pretty substantial, possibly.
I assumed we'd be back there. I didn't realize it would be withdrawn.
Ah, okay.
All right, okay, so this is a public hearing. We are taking information related to a notice of intent filed by Stephen Stratford for the demolition of a single-family dwelling and the construction of a new single-family dwelling at 10 Wing Terrace. The proposed work would be within the 100-foot buffer zone to bank and bordering vegetative wetlands under the State Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw Article 14. The material is available in the Conservation Office for public review.
Oh, thank you.
All right, good evening, sir. All right, please introduce yourself and your relationship to the property, and you're welcome to speak.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Bernard Hamill from Star Engineering. I'm the engineer of the project. I'm representing Mr. Stratford this evening, who happens to be in the audience with us tonight. If you have any questions that
Right.
would relate to the further development of the property. What we have in front of you is the property of 10 Wing Terrace, where we have an existing dwelling. And the situation is we have a very large drainage channel running pretty much through the property. There was some work done on the 8 Wing Terrace several years ago. To follow that to do the work. I think they had a little more room to work with. But it's our intention to remove the existing dwelling, remove the sheds that are out back, to build a new dwelling, more modern. I believe this dwelling currently is about 50 years old or so, so really needs a facelift, and we thought about renovation and just didn't look economically feasible. So we're in front of you this evening to do a replacement. We did some test holes out there, we did some drainage design, drainage analysis for the site, so that the runoff would be reduced from the site. And we provided a 25-foot buffer. We're actually a little bit further than the existing dwelling from the existing water and vegetated wetland. The package should have both large drawings as well as the smaller, more manageable drawings in the right. Any questions you might have, I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay. Sure, thank you for that summary. Eileen or John, do you have some initial comments?
Okay, sure. First off, the stream shown as drainage channel, it's not a drainage channel, it's a stream, and it's actually on your regulatory streams map. So it's considered, it has a riverfront area. It's a really nice stream for those of you who have seen it. It's hardly a drainage channel. So with regard to the filing, we need more of a narrative explaining the work, particularly the removal of the slabs the sheds are on. One of the shed slabs is actually on the bank. So we need some sort of detailed construction techniques, how that's going to be done. Additionally, so that work is also beyond what's shown as the limit of work on the plan. So there's a siltation fence shown on the proposed site plan with a limit of work, but yet that construction for the removal of those, both the patio and the shed slabs, is beyond the limit of work. So there probably needs, well, there needs to be probably 2 erosion control boundaries, not one. And one would be maybe a temporary limit of work, and the other one would be the more permanent limit of work. The NOI did have an alternatives analysis, but it was really an alternative, a buffer zone alternatives. It wasn't really a riverfront alternative, so that should be beefed up a little with regard to the riverfront area alternatives. Included in the NOI was a wetland report from LEC. And that report referenced a, quote, marginal wetland that they showed as kind of like an oval in the left rear corner. And it didn't really address whether or not it's a jurisdictional wetland. It was, it said something like that you needed to talk more about it or something in the report. So we need some more information on that area.
Where was this referenced in that report?
So it's in the NOI. There's a one-page, I think 1 or 2-page report from the wetland scientist,
Right.
LEC. So that's where that was.
Okay.
And then just one final point. So obviously this house has a very small backyard, but the proposed front yard setback is 28 feet and zoning allows 25. So it's possible to pull the house forward 3 feet and get 3 feet more of a backyard.
Sneak it over a little bit to both the left and probably to the front
Okay.
slightly. I like to leave a little room because the concrete guys are not always accurate.
3 feet, so.
And I'll probably be doing the layout, so I like to leave a little bit of a margin, but I understand your concern.
So,
That's right. So, and there's trees, there's several trees within the yard area.
Right.
And it wasn't clear which trees are being saved, which ones are being removed. If you could show that on the plan as well. That's it.
okay. Indra, further comments?
Is this the proposed house is closer to the existing, closer to?
No, it's actually a couple feet
Further away? So how you're gonna treat this rooftop?
Sorry,
The,
which?
the rooftop runoff, roof runoff?
Yes, we have Caltech chambers in the front, shown on the proposed plan. We're going to infiltrate the whole rooftop right into the ground,
And,
provide drainage calculation.
yeah, I saw that, okay. Okay.
Okay? Gail?
So is has the bank been flagged or anything, John?
Pardon?
Has the bank been flagged or?
That's a good question.
There were flags out there when we did the original survey a couple of years ago. Many of those flags have since disappeared. We did show little triangles along the embankment there where we did see the flags.
There were a few visible,
There were
right?
So who flagged that?
The
LE.
scientist.
Okay.
And
LEC.
the location within by survey instrument of those flags.
I saw at least 4 flags.
I mean, it's a pretty steep bank. It's a pretty easy delineation, frankly,
Okay.
yeah.
So I agree there needs to, be a kind of an alternatives and then moving it forward and identifying which of the trees are going to be removed. And I think because of how close the sheds are and if they have the skids or the
They'll provide some
slabs, yeah, well, kind of a detail of how they're going to be removed without disturbing the bank.
Okay. Bill, you had some comments on it?
Yeah, I was going to suggest trying to move the house, so I'm glad you're considering left and forward, both of those directions, move it away from the regulated stream. The removal of the slab for the right-hand shed, where it sits directly contacting the bank, has to be done very carefully. Once you disturb a bank, it's very hard to restore it, as I'm sure you're aware, and stabilize it again. So it would be good to make sure that is not disturbed, if that's possible. And it would be beneficial to have that slab gone, because then you could restore some of that area and some of the permeable nature. Did notice that there was dumping of leaves and twigs over the bank. Definitely not something that we want to see happen in the future. And the bank, to me, is so sensitive, and I wouldn't even try to clean it out. It looks like if you just left it alone, didn't add anything to it, it would, it's not obstructing the flow or anything like that. But it's definitely in a protected area that shouldn't have dumping of any kind of yard waste into it. And the town picks that stuff up for free, so just put it out. I would like to see you have a fence on the right-hand side. When this is completed, I think the fence should be continuous with the rock wall and to both property lines, left and right, so that it's clear, the demarcation of, where people should not be going beyond. Driveway runoff, how do you plan to deal with driveway runoff?
We had provided those Caltech chambers for the roof runoff, and our calculations show that it's sufficient. However, I realize that it is a policy of Burlington to put some riprap along the sides. We'd be more than happy to add that in.
Okay, that's appreciated. And speaking of your Caltex, currently, the rooftop runoff goes into the ground and through some pipes and out into the stream. It seems to be, unimpeded, flowed right to the stream. In the new design, the rooftop runoff is going into the Caltex, and yet in your analysis of drainage, it doesn't seem to be very much decrease at all in the flow to your catchment area number 2, which is the stream. So what is the source of post-development flow into the stream in your calculations?
Over the lawn area.
Just over the lawn area?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
the soils are not particularly great. There's a upper layer of fill in that area. That's why we did the soil testing. We don't intend to go across the whole yard and remove all the fill. What we're going to do is remove the fill in the area of the Caltex, put some stone down, put a sand perimeter around that, and then let it go into the natural soil, which is a little bit better.
Okay,
but we're still staying 2 feet plus off the water table.
okay, that's good. Yeah, I was just surprised looking at the numbers that there was
Yep.
barely a 10% reduction in flow, even though you're capturing all the rooftop into the Cultex, so.
We look at that, but at the same time, we just can't catch every drop like we would.
Yep. Okay, that is, all the comments I had already been addressed, other ones have been unaddressed, so, thank you.
Ed, just to clarify my own mind, the chambers in the front, they're basically showing, capturing roof runoff. Is that also inclusive of anything on the backside?
Yes, the gutters will come around the edges of the perimeter of the house, underground, to pick up the back side of the roof slope and bring it all forward into those.
We had on the present house, everything is going out to the stream.
It's going to the street or to the stream. There's no system at all.
Okay, Jen, anything further?
Nothing further, no.
When I was at the site, I was struck by the two very large trees on the right-hand side. We need to save those. Those are part of the stream, and they provide, as I'm sure you're aware, important shade for the stream and so forth. So I think you should avoid at all costs, if you can, the two on the far right.
If we push the house over a little bit, we'll take the driveway with it, and we should be able to keep those.
Okay, that would be good.
We'll definitely look at that.
All right.
And try to make it happen.
And given the conditions of the soil that you talked about, is it possible, or is there a need, if you have a stone on the side of the driveway to feed the discharge or the overflow into the Cultec? Because otherwise it may not, it may not infiltrate.
Yeah,
Given what
we can certainly look at that option.
Could you look at it?
Yeah, we'll try to see what we can do.
I'm not saying that should or should not be, that's your decision, but if the soils are poor, I'm throwing that out there for you to look at.
The problem is the layer of fill over the entire site. I believe that at one point before when the subdivision, prior to its existence, that the area from the road down, sloped down towards the stream area, and it was built at some point. That's my opinion.
Okay.
That's
And,
why we're seeing a couple feet of fill in that whole area.
The grading on the driveway, if you're going to have, start out with stone on the side of the driveway, I think you probably need either a note somewhere or some grading that indicates that the driveway has to be pitched a little bit to make it go in that,
We'll put a high point in the center of the drive.
something to indicate it on the drawing.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
certainly do that.
All right. Okay, is there anyone in the audience for this? This is 10 Wing Terrace. Anybody have any, you're welcome to say anything, or if you have questions, or,
I just had one question.
what's your name?
My name is Virginia Shotton, and my family, we live at 16 Arnold Terrace, so we're the back property, and we share wetlands.
Okay, so why don't you come up and just talk into the microphone, or sit here, whatever you want, and you can say whatever you'd like.
We know nothing, we're just here, we moved in 26 years ago, we have the wetlands between your property and ours, and we just like to make sure that those were protected. So we came to find out what the concerns were. I would assume that if any of this project is negatively impacting those wetlands, that
Right.
you will take care of that so that we.
Yeah, so you abut that nice set of woods in back of the other side of the stream.
We own
You're very,
all-
very lucky to have that in back of
Oh,
you.
yeah, exactly, that's why we're here. We love it.
Right.
So we want to.
Yeah. Do you have a comment in response to her concern?
Certainly that we will be doing no work past the stream, therefore your property will receive no impact at all. We're not going past the stream area.
Right, that was it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Okay, anyone else want to comment? No. So it might be useful, John, do you have anything further on this?
Well, I referenced the need for more of a narrative to describe some of the construction and also the alternatives analysis. One of the other things the narrative has to address is improvement in the riverfront area. So that's one of the performance standards, how you're improving the riverfront area. That should be included in the narrative.
Given the comments from the members of the commission, we kind of want to stay out of the riverfront itself, but I believe by removing some of those sheds and those impervious areas back there, and by minimizing our runoff, I think we can include that or incorporate that into our narrative.
So when those sheds are removed, is that an area where there may be some plantings?
We can add some plantings, absolutely.
That would be, native or riverbank?
We have several choices in that matter.
Okay, so I have a list here. Do you want to copy it down, or do you want to get it from the office?
No, this is all straightforward. I know exactly what you'd like.
Do you have, you feel there's a need to review the list at all? Normally, that's what we do.
Not at all,
It's all up here, huh?
All right there.
Can I just add one minor note?
Yes.
Since he's changing the drawings anyway, it might be useful to change the buffer, change the lines so that it shows our 20-foot no disturb and 40-foot no build,
Okay.
rather than 25 and 50 that is mentioned here.
And also, that should be not labeled as a drainage channel.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll make that change.
Well, while we're at it, so also show so you show a lot of dimensions, but they're zoning dimensions. If you could show just the closest point of the building to the resource area, just on both the, the proposed and existing.
All right, I have no doubt that you have it all up here, but I list 13 things, and I could not capture 13 things and get them all. And what will happen is we'll end up sending you back and away at the next meeting for another 2 weeks after that. So I would suggest, if you want to make a list, retrieve it at some point out of your storage media and send it to the office or something, and if there's anything missing, we can add to it.
I'd be more than happy to take care of that.
All right, thank you.
You can also watch these meetings on BCAT.
On TV.
Oh, that's a very good, you can tune in and watch us again if you want to have a deja vu.
Sounds exciting.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right, is there anything further?
Vote to continue?
Yep. Is there should we have a motion to continue? Do we have a motion to continue the hearing for the project at 10 Wing Terrace?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 600.
To the date?
That was till, what's the next?
23rd.
Okay, that
May
motion
23rd.
was for the May 23rd. Please add that.
That may be problematic for me. Can we push it to the June meeting?
That would be June 13th.
June 13th.
That'd be fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the motion says June 13th.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Thank you. Okay, and, let's see, we are now on item 6. It's a continued public hearing, notice of intent 5 Susan Ave. It's the Blake Development LLC. It's to demolish a single-family dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling. It has a DEP number of 122-625. All right, good evening.
Good evening. How are you all tonight?
Fine, and how are you tonight?
Very well, thank you. It's nice to see the sunshine out for a change and
That's right.
the rain subside, although I have to admit, it is wonderful seeing everything green and starting to wake up too.
There you go. Okay. All right, so please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, my name is Joe Blake, the owner of Blake Development. I met with you a few weeks ago to discuss during our initial hearing the notice of intent filing which we had made for proposed new construction of 5 Susan Ave. Took a tremendous amount of feedback from the staff and commission. Look to put that into effect for the review this evening. Be happy to highlight some of the changes which we have made. There were a number of action items which we took away last time.
Sure.
Show to the staff and commission how you'd like to proceed. So some of the change log, which we've implemented into the plan that you see in front of you today, if you look on the driveway, initially we had a stone trench, ran about halfway up the driveway. We have extended that stone drainage trench all the way up. We did add some additional detail for the slope into the trench itself there. I have supporting calculations for drainage of both the trench that you see there, as well as the stormwater catchment systems that I did submit to the commission for your review. That was one change which we had made. Another change obviously being the capacities of the roof runoff and the driveway trench. The other change which we did make to it also was just provide a little more detail. There were some questions before around some of the proximity measurements, and quite candidly, it was just the way that the text fell onto the previous plan. It was a little tough to deduce what the distance is from the flagged wetland locations there to the proposed dwelling. So the nearest measurement that we have, and we were all in agreement on last time, was 15.3 feet from the existing dwelling to those wetland areas. The newly proposed dwelling, I misstated in the last meeting, I thought it was 29 feet to the buffer, or excuse me, to the wetland. It's actually 23 feet. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone this evening. One of the other items which we were asked to pursue was just do a little bit of additional due diligence around the proximity of the front setback for other homes on Susan Ave. So we did review with the building department and found that on average, the homes on that road, based on the filed plot plans that the building department has, about 25 to 26 feet for the setback. The existing dwelling at 5 Susan Ave is actually 30 feet for the front setback to the dwelling as it is today, to the foundation. Our plan calls for a 25-foot setback just to be within the zoning regulations, of course, but I thought some of the homes on the road were a little bit closer than 25 feet. That perception must be out by a few feet, so.
Very much.
Those were the majority of the changes which we implemented here today. I do have some additional data around what some of the prior and current impervious calculations are versus what the intended impervious calculations are, and with some of the deltas in there as well if you'd like to review, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of what we've changed since last time.
So you clarified the impervious surface before and after, is what you did?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, all right. All right, John or Eileen? I heard him say a number of things that we did talk about. Is there anything further that you have on your list? I see anything at this point?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of things. So Joe did come in and talk to John and I to clarify a few things from the last meeting. So I appreciate that he's been making an effort to communicate with us. I think that we may have had a misunderstanding about one thing, which was that you removed the post and rail fence from the edge of the driveway.
Yes, that's correct.
But I think the intention was to actually have that fence still come down, maybe not on the driveway, but near it to kind of protect the plantings that you propose to put in, because otherwise the homeowners are likely to just start mowing in there.
Sure.
And it won't really be a protected area. So that would probably have to go back, maybe not right on the driveway, but somewhere nearby.
I'd be happy to make that change, no problem.
I did forward on the calculations that you sent us to the commissioners as well, and I do have a couple of questions or concerns about some of the numbers. I'm curious as to where they came from. For existing under dwelling one, you had provided calculations including the proposed addition, but that really was a different project. We need to just see the number from currently, which is 1349.
Yes.
And then you had said the proposed square footage is 3759, and I'm just wondering where that came from, because to me it looks like the house is something like 2,500 square feet.
For the proposed dwelling?
Yeah, is it
calculation?
really that big, 3759? It looks like it's something in the region of, what did I say earlier? 35 feet by 80, something like that.
You know, Eileen,
Footprint?
thank you for pointing that out. I would have to get back to you with a better
It
answer for the.
it actually potentially means both of those numbers should be lower.
Right.
So I'm not sure whether the difference is actually 2,400 or 1,150. And 2,530 was used in your HydroCAD calculations. So we just need some clarification on that.
I'd be happy to clarify that.
And also, I just want a clarification on, under your land use, when you mentioned 5,960 square feet of disturbance, I'm wondering what that counted. Does that count lawn? Just wondering where that number came from. I know that we had talked about it, but I'm still not clear on where that came from.
So the 5,960 square feet for what we can define as land use on there
Yep.
was taking into account the area of the dwelling, as you see in the plan there. I believe it also incorporates the driveway and the area which was previously disturbed by the homeowner, which we are looking to.
Previously disturbed how, though? Because I think that by disturbed area, we really just mean the house and the driveway?
Okay. You know, we were considering what the homeowner had cleared previously in some of that square footage as well. So, you know,
He cleared what, trees?
I think there was some tree clearing done prior to my involvement about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago perhaps, on the right property, along where that no disturb zone is.
Well, if we could just get a clarification on what part was disturbed and what you mean by disturbed.
I'd be happy to.
I'm sure the commissioners have a few more questions.
Okay, maybe we'll go in the reverse order. Jen, anything?
Just for the record, I watched last week's meeting, the previous meetings that I had missed, BCAT. I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what the other commissioners have to say about the disturbances and,
Let's see.
yeah.
Ed?
Nothing.
Okay.
Whatever
Bill,
you say.
anything further?
You had mentioned they're planning the heat with propane, is that still the case?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Where's the propane tank gonna go?
So the probably initial location for it, I'd like to try to incorporate it behind where the storage container is going to be for the water there. It still puts it well within the range of where the propane company would be able to fill it, but still far enough away where any water being recharged back into the earth should not impede the operation or the survivability of that tank.
So that's, are you showing behind the storm tech chamber somewhere in there?
Yes, sir. So it still have to maintain the offset to the dwelling itself. So it would most likely be roughly 20 feet off of that, off the home there, right in between the area where we have the new plantings that we'll be introducing there.
I'm not familiar with the requirements. Is 20 foot from the house, is that the normal requirement, or?
The fire department does recommend 20 feet or more for an
That's
offset.
within the post rail, the fence.
Yeah, we're still within, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Gail?
No, I'm okay.
Indra, anything further?
I guess the only thing that, I mean, I know this was already discussed before, but I think that just a homeowner is aware that this deck that's proposed in the back, that's it. Because I just remember so many houses that we've seen that are built so close to the line, they have this little tiny deck, and they come in, oh, I'd like to expand it. I'd like to, that's it.
Thank you. I'll be sure to let them know. Thank you.
Okay.
Could condition something about that
Yeah, that it can't be.
future.
Yeah,
No expansion.
it happened on, near me, and one on Lexington Street, and
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience for this? No. Okay, the only thing I had was, are you proposing an overflow to the trench along the driveway at all? Or should there be an overflow there in case it fills up with water?
It's not something that I have thought about. I'd be happy to explore it with the engineer of the project.
Please
just
do.
to see if there's any-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's very low in there, as you
Right.
know. So I could just picture, given the nature of the site, the trench filling up and no place to go.
Right, right. Okay, sorry, be happy to look into that, no problem.
Can I add two more things?
What's that?
As I recall, I would kind of like to glance at that again, but I think that the alternatives analysis wasn't really strong enough for a riverfront alternatives analysis. It didn't really go into actual alternatives. It just mentioned some of the regulation numbers. I think that you should take a look at that again and just see if, I think we may have talked about this before about, talking about how, you could leave it in place, you could potentially move it, but we looked at the setbacks and you can't move it.
Right.
You looked at putting an addition, but that would be more cost prohibitive. Those sort of true alternatives.
Okay.
And there was one more thing. We did notice earlier that I think a single test pit had been done back in 2017 for the project, but I
Yes.
think that's right where the existing house is. So I'm wondering whether, sorry?
Proposed.
Sorry, where the proposed house is actually going. I'm wondering whether another test pit would be in order.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do another one, that's, yeah,
Well, talk to your engineer and see what they think,
sure.
okay?
Thank
And you can make a case either way, I guess. Okay, so what I heard is that the alternative analysis needs to be strengthened. I just heard Eileen say that. A clarification on some of the areas and how those areas are used, square foot areas, in the analysis. The overflow, you're going to take a look at, and perhaps another test pit in an area that, where it would be most appropriate for your storm tech chambers.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I just have another note of the deck in the back. That's it. No deck expansion plans should be entertained in the future. I have the overflow, the alternative analysis, additional information there.
Right.
And then just revising where the post and rail fence is on here to extend it a little bit beyond where the trench is in the driveway, but just, we'll get
Right.
that updated in the plan as well.
Correct. Okay. So, John and Eileen, do you think if they got all this stuff in, it's doable to close an issue at the next meeting? What's your feeling?
Do you have more issues?
No, I think it's possible. So I just want to point out one other thing, though. So this was filed as a bylaw stream because this section of Sawmill Brook is not considered perennial, so it's a regulatory stream under the bylaw. If this were a perennial stream, I'm not sure this project would be permittable under the regulations. So as a result, you need to make some sort of finding to that effect, because the regulations for the bylaw, you have more flexibility on those to grant waivers than you do under the wetlands regulation, the state regulations, but specifically, one of the redevelopment standards is the area of proposed work shall not exceed the amount of degraded area, and by the degraded area in the regulations is strictly impervious or no topsoil, so that doesn't include lawn, it's just the building and the driveway, essentially. Provided that the proposed work may alter up to 10% of, if the degraded area is less than 10% of the riverfront area. So if less than 10% of the riverfront area is degraded currently, you can disturb up to 10%. In this case, the existing condition already exceeds 10%. It's substantially over 10%. So if this were a perennial stream, this project would probably not be permittable.
Does this require a waiver under our bylaw?
Would, yes,
Okay, for disturbing greater than 10%
correct,
additional area?
correct.
Okay, and what would be is there a performance standard that is articulated to justify the waiver?
In our bylaw, in our regulations, no. So
Well, we have conditions to grant a waiver that
Right.
that the area is improved.
Right.
What I'm saying is that discussion articulated, I wonder, to justify us granting the waiver?
In the application,
Yes. You may need to beef that up.
may need to.
Yeah, this is there are conditions under which we can grant a waiver. One of the key things we focus on is that the resource area, the riverfront, or whatever areas are involved that are being waived, that your project is making it better, that there is an improvement for the good of the resource area. So the argument should be waived so we can do the waiver under that discussion. You should have that argument in there, that discussion.
Thank you.
So I think there's a distinction between riverfront restoration and riverfront enhancement or improvement. So riverfront restoration would be taking degraded area which has no vegetation, no soils, and restoring it. Riverfront improvement would be taking maybe the lawn area and planting trees and turning it into natural vegetation, which is what they're proposing to do. So if you decide that they're doing enough of that, you could decide to grant the waiver.
So I think a discussion to support the commission doing that, which is what we always ask for. We always ask for some improvement that is presented by the applicant as part of the project, and that becomes the justification in the decision.
For granting the waiver.
Right.
Okay, sure.
Right.
Thank you.
You can always do a quick search on both the bylaw. It's mostly under the bylaw, I think.
Okay.
I think so. But you also, they're on the same page of the regulations. You can do a search under waiver, and you'll see the language in there.
Thank you.
Okay. It's easy to get to on the website. Okay?
We had
Yes.
a note, we're now seeing a lot more shrubs and trees going in, and the applicant should probably be concerned about the maintenance of that, nothing being raked that way. Falling leaves, things of that sort. Just kind of a note to say, be careful now, you got a lot more growth than there was there before.
Thank you. It's an excellent
Leaves
point.
aren't a bad thing.
No, but you don't want them raking into the resource areas, what he's saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I understand. I thought you meant into
All
the
right,
trees.
so is there anything else from anyone?
Gotcha.
So Mr. Blake, you kind of have a to-do list to work on.
I have to write all my notes down. It's impossible.
I'm not going to comment. All right.
But thank you. I do believe I understand the action items which I'm responsible for. Eileen and John are always wonderful to work with, so I will perform the work necessary. Once I have it completed in a condition I believe is satisfactory, then I'll review it with Eileen and John, solicit their feedback from it.
Sure.
And just for my understanding, would I submit that prior to another hearing in front of the board for that again? Or okay. Thank you.
Right, you would submit that, and if it's actually done early enough, but that would be like 1 week from now or so.
I would need some more time than
You
that.
might need some more time, but.
Probably the June 12th, I think.
Yeah,
is it?
but we might be able to wrap everything, if you get it in early enough, we might be able to get everything wrapped up, including the permit.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. I can't make any promises on record, but I will try for it. Thank you, Chuck.
So you're
June?
voting to continue to June 13th?
Yes, could I have a motion to continue this project to June
13th.
13th? Second? Second. All in favor? 600. Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. All right, next. We are on, looks like we're on item 7. That's a continued public hearing. That says 328 to 330 Cambridge Street. This is for Iconic Capital LLC. That they're demolishing the existing commercial building and they're constructing a new office building. It's DEP file number 122-622. Hello there.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Frank DePietro, an engineer with the BSC Group, representing Iconic Capital. And with me is my colleague and associate, Emily Gurick, who is one of the very bright young rising stars at BSC that not only did the soils evaluation work, but also did most of the work on this project.
There we go. You're the force behind him. All right.
I just get the credit, she does all the work. So, a couple of things. We were originally before the commission back in February 28th, and A lot has gone on since then, so I'd like to sort of review what the changes have been, where we've been to. There were also a number of comments, questions that the commission had at that hearing. I'd like to go over that. And then we can sort of go back and talk about what any new issues you might have. So we had a little bit of coordination, I'll use, between the Board of Health and the Planning Board regarding some of the drainage. So now we'll be before you people to have some more coordination. Briefly, let me do this. It's been a little while, just to sort of orientate folks where this project is located. This is Cambridge Street, 62 Wilmington Road. Probably the best landmark is Lacasha's and a bunch of flowers. This is the site here we're looking at. It actually occurs back to the end of the site, so the area that we're looking at is this location. It's where the Reed Ham Farm Works were historically. We're looking to basically demolish this area and put in a state office building that, now that the secret is out, it will be for the Department of Children and Family Services. Again, this is Chestnut Avenue coming out into Cambridge Street. The flower place and Lacasha's is there. We're looking to put a 21,500 square foot building on the site, an access road coming for Chestnut Ave, I'll get back to that in a minute, and an access coming off of Cambridge Street at that location. We have been before the Planning Board, Conservation, once Board of Health. Planning Board has actually voted to approve the project, and I'll go through the details here, subject to you folks. You folks have the control over us right now. We need your vote eventually. So what we're looking at, normally it's sort of the other way around, but anyway, so we went back and forth a little bit. The access off of Cambridge Street will be a two-way access. So people can come out and take left, take a right. There was some back and forth because, if you know the area in the afternoon, it's a little bit difficult to take a left turn. What we've done is made this access a one-way out of the site, so that folks can come through here and go out, go down to Chestnut Avenue, take a right onto Wilmington Road, go to the signal, and then go left or south on Cambridge Street, or go down Wilmington Road towards Wilmington. We are looking at putting 85 parking spaces, but back and forth with the Planning Board, this area here, there's 14 parking spaces up in this location. We're going to have those reserved or land banked. So we have designed the site to accommodate the drainage, the runoff from these areas here. And we will oversize our infiltration basin to handle that, but there are criteria in a draft decision that I haven't seen that we will have to meet the criteria, and then we will be allowed to build these. So at this point, I'm not sure whether we just cut off the pavement over this end or whether there may be some grading in this area just to sort of get it ready. This parking area will not be built. We originally had a bioretention area where this would drain in. The Board of Health had some concerns about the long-term maintenance of that. And so their decision required us to take this runoff and put it into our infiltration system. There was also some questions about this area in front where Planning Board wanted us to direct it into Cambridge Street. Board of Health had some issues recently on Cambridge Street with flooding and icing during last winter. So we went back and forth, and we now have a small infiltration system in this area here. We, at the last hearing, or even we had talked about, often we do test pits after the fact. So when we do our original investigations, we really don't have an idea where we're going to put infiltration. And so oftentimes we guess wrong. And there are changes that come about later on when we do the test pits. So to get this straight, and this was discussed at the conservation hearing, we were out in the field with Emily, who is a certified soil evaluator, and we did 3 test pits in the area of our infiltration system. We went back out later and did a test pit out here in the other infiltration area. And Emily was demonstrating the high technical expertise you need, like making a ball in your hand to see what type of soil it is, or making snakes to make sure it's clay or not clay. So she did also have all the color charts and stuff like that, so it was very impressive, very educational. So what we found, and again, I think this may be a good example to adopt this policy in the future with the commission, is that we had 3 test pits. These 2 test pits were what we thought. Great. This test pit up here was in fact clay about 4 feet down. Obviously, it's not going to work for infiltration. The red line here was our original system. So what we ended up having to do was go back and do the redesign now, push this system into this black area here, made it a little bit higher, so it was more depth. And what that necessitated was us to raise this portion of the site about 2 feet from what we had before, so that we would maintain the separation, 2-foot separation from the groundwater to the bottom of the system, a little bit higher system. So the grading in this area changed. The site itself did not change other than the grading. There's still retaining walls that run along the edge of this thing here, still the same amount of impervious area. But that modification allowed us, before we get final permits, to avoid coming back and modifying our design. This area out here, again, the soils on the site are probably C-type soils, not the greatest soils. So what we have here is an infiltration. It's a 500-gallon, essentially concrete box with holes in it and the bottom open. We have an overflow that ties into our drainage system so that in higher frequency storms, the water would flow in here. We have sized this system to take all of this runoff, even though there will be some infiltration. And so this system is oversized. This water will either go into the ground here or overflow and go into the ground here. There was a concern at the last hearing about, with all this infiltration, are we starving the wetlands? So we sort of have a two. There's a portion of the site here that goes directly into the wetland area. So that water gets there immediately. The overflow from this area gets into the wetland area. There are concerns with the abutters on flooding, peak flows. We have, depending on the storm, reduced the peak flows from somewhere around 20, 25% to about 40%. So there's water getting into there directly. The water going into this area here will flow into the wetlands over time. So again, I don't think we're going to be drying out those wetland areas. There were concerns expressed, I think, by staff about some of the design. We had some storm water quality catch basins. We've eliminated those things. We have a standard catch basin with a sump and hood, and a water quality unit here, same thing over in here. All the runoff from the pavement goes through a water quality unit before it goes into the infiltration system. The roof goes directly into the infiltration system. There were concerns expressed about some of the plants. I had a stern talk with our landscape architect, and those have been revised. So we now have all native plants. We did talk to the client about making this a 2-story building. The tenant DCFS does not want a 2-story, they want a 1-story building here. That's what they want, so that was not an option. And I will show you the... I always learn something when we're working with our landscape architect friends. One of the tricks they showed us was to superimpose our site plan on an aerial photo, so you sort of get the context of how it fits into the neighborhood. So again, this is a little bit different angle, and this is Cambridge Street here, Chestnut Ave, so this is the site, shows where it fits in. We had some discussions with some of the abutters, and so we are adding a screen of evergreens. I think there are arborvitaes there. There'll be some along the front here. There'll be a little bit of a lawn, some landscaping along here. 2 other items just to make you aware of is there was a discussion about adding a sidewalk along Chestnut Avenue from our site all the way down to Wilmington Road. We will be undertaking that. There are several large trees that will have to be removed. We'll be working with the town on that. We've talked about replacing them, certainly not in time, but the type and number of trees. With that, I'd be happy to turn it over to any questions you might have.
Okay. guess this is almost like an initial presentation again.
Yes.
So, why don't do you have any observations or comments, John or Eileen, so
Sure.
far?
So even though you haven't seen it for a while, it's been obviously before the planning board and the Board of Health, so I've sort of been following all the changes. I don't really have any comments. I do have a question, and I'm sure it's in there, and I just forgot. What, the water quality units are what?
It's don't set the 900 for some of them are larger than that for some of the other areas.
Basically, it, LID would have been nice, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Why wasn't an LID done? Why aren't they
Well, it
doing
was
it? They
initially,
tried.
but the Board of Health didn't want it, so.
Stupid.
Eventually, we're going to have to.
For the
do it.
record, that's
LID
stupid.
is going to be a requirement. I mean, we really need to do it, for our NIPD's permit, so.
Yeah, their concern is about safety of standing water
Well,
features.
no, he said the concern was maintenance. That's what they
Right.
said.
My understanding, talking to the Board of Health and the staff, was we made sure that this would not hold more than 6 inches of water, because we know that's a concern. The concern that the Board of Health expressed is over a longer period of time, particularly in the back of a site, LID features need to be checked out every so often and maintained. And their concern is that out of sight, out of mind, it won't be maintained, and then basically there'll be no treatment. The water will just run off from the pavement area.
So do water quality units. Those have to be inspected and maintained too.
I understand, that's,
Having
That's
said,
ignorance.
that, we do have the inspections of the subsurface things often, but when we've had homeowners and small businesses, you know from being around Burlington a long time, we have gone back and we have seen detention ponds that were not maintained at all.
yes.
And we've seen many examples of it, unfortunately.
This is not neither. This is not a small business or a homeowner. And I think you could also put in the conditions, just like you do with a underground system, that there has to be some periodic maintenance and inspection. And, that could be part of the conditions.
Yeah.
But certainly on larger projects, there is a standard condition to that effect, and there are reports that are filed. I've seen some of them, and some of my clients do that on a regular basis.
We get copies of the contracts sometimes.
Yes, exactly right.
All right, well, we'll
So
have,
who will be the owner of this property going forward once it's
The
developed?
It'll be Iconic Capital. So my understanding is that DCFS will have at least a 5-year to maybe a 10-year lease. It will be there. And then Iconic Capital will lease the site to them. They'll buy it from the current owners in the very near future, and then they will own that property, Iconic Capital LLC.
So they're not a Massachusetts company, so they would hire some some property manager to maintain the property?
I believe so, yes.
okay. Indra, anything?
So you said you redesigned that storm scepter at the back.
Yes. So
So have you submitted that calculations to us?
they're in the calculations.
Okay.
In the full drainage report. So the original project we saw back in February, this was a water quality catch basin. This was just a drain manhole. This is now a standard catch basin, it heaps up. This is the water quality unit. And then it goes into, this one actually discharges into the wetland area, this area. There's another one up in here that we modified to, again, there was a catch basin that was a water quality unit. We modified that and tied it in to system where we've got a water quality unit here. This area, the redesign here that now has the drainage going down, ties into that same water quality
That
unit.
water quality, okay.
It has been sized for the whole area, even though for a year or two, whatever, this will be a permeable area of grass.
Thank you.
All right, Gail, anything?
So the parking is all outside of the 100-foot, is that correct?
No.
No, I think that's it.
The existing,
Traffic.
to the back of this one. So the wetlands really are about over here. So almost all this portion of the back of the existing building, I think the 100-year buffer goes right to the back of the
Yeah.
existing building. So that area is already disturbed. And we are not, there is some area in here that we're going a little bit beyond, right next to the cell tower. But we are maintaining no disturbance of a 20-foot no disturb area with our design. And all of the area, there's no water quality there right now, and it
Right.
discharges. So all of the site will be, go through water quality units. And again, we're maintaining the flows.
Is there a, because I was trying to look on it here, is there proposed fencing around the parking area or something? Or-
So we will have sort of this area here is flat, then it goes up, so there's a retaining wall that starts around here. So there'll be guardrail and fencing. There will be chain link fencing around this area over in here. We are providing, because we have to, a gravel driveway that goes down to service the cell tower. And then there will be fencing along these areas here. We don't have fencing on the side. But anywhere where we have a retaining wall, we would have a fence.
And is it, in terms of where they're, I mean, this is still early on, but there'll be on the plan, a site for where, like, snow storage and that kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah, we're not going to be, obviously, the snow storage would be placed probably in these areas over in here, away from the wetland areas.
So I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, but, so this is, they're leasing to the state, correct? This is a
Correct.
state agency. And the state has a, I think, that they have a plan where, employees can get T-Pass for and
Yes.
so forth. And so I'm wondering whether the bus is going to be, having more traffic there because of employees, maybe people coming. This is totally unrelated.
Sure.
But bus stops are oftentimes really messy because there's not, enough trash cans. And I know that's the MBTA, but I wonder if, what the maintenance is going to be on the site because there could be lots of stuff.
So one of the items that we negotiate with the planning board, we're going to redo this existing bus shelter. It'll be like the ones that are in the district or on Northwest Park now, that type of bus shelter. If you go out there right now, it doesn't work, but there's a historic telephone, payphone right there. And when I've been out there, I'm not sure who takes care of the trash. With regards to one of the advantages of this site for the state was there is a bus
Right.
stop there from Boston area, they're coming out of Cambridge. My understanding, however, is that there'll be a lot of social workers, so what we've been told is about a third of them are going to be out of the office at any given time doing field visits. There may be another 10% of the folks that might be on vacation, at a seminar, out sick, or whatever else. So the reason why we're not looking to get all the parking built right away is because we don't think we need it at this point in time. Also, the interior of the building, not that it's your purview, but the building is set to be able to expand up to hold 80 staff and 5 or so visitors during the day or clients.
And that could change the parking because they just have a 10-year lease. It could be anybody in there.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because right now this is a waiting stop for people picking up, folks getting off the bus. So I would imagine after hours, and they have a little bit of flexible hours, 7 to 9 and like 4 to 6. But I would imagine that during the daytime, this will probably not be able to be used by other folks, but after hours, I'm sure there won't be a guard at the gate or anything like that.
Okay. I want to touch on something. I have no problems with the work that's been done so far, and I think you are dealing with all the parties and coming up with a plan that is workable. But what I want to talk about is carbon emissions. I think it's time to start really pushing to get those into the design of buildings, especially commercial buildings, large-scale residential, commercially owned buildings. What are your plans for heating this structure?
That I don't know. I mean, I'll talk to the architect about that.
I would greatly appreciate that. Massachusetts in 2008 passed a Global Warming Solutions Act, and it called for 25% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2025 and 80% by 2050. So obviously, this building properly constructed will be alive in 2050, and it's awfully hard to retrofit it and reduce the carbon emissions once the building is constructed. The ultimate goal is net zero for a building, to have as much electricity or power generated on site as you use, or that, you're making solar panels and selling that energy certificates to other buyers to help offset some of their production of greenhouse gases. The Sierra Club is really active in this area, both at the state level and nationally, and they would like to see everything be electric. Heat, electricity, air conditioning, all electric buildings and solar panels on the roof is the ideal. Not necessarily making all that you use, but at least with no gas connection, no oil, no coal, you're not generating on-site carbon emissions. So buildings of this magnitude, I think that the town should really begin to push for, and I'd like to have some kind of a communication started with the planning board, to talk about having them encourage some kind of carbon reduction in planning of buildings of this magnitude or larger in the future. It's reduction of carbon emissions is not easy, but it is essential. And even on residential type projects, if you don't put a gas line to the building and make it all electric heat, it's unlikely that a customer is going to dig a gas line and pay for it and change it back to gas heat. And that way, you are encouraging the use of electric where the electric supply is more adaptable to clean energy growth in the future and more, geothermal or wind or solar or whatever becomes available. Do you have any feeling for, in building a structure like this, is there a significant difference in just construction cost between putting in an all-electric heating system versus a gas heating system?
I don't have a handle on that. I will certainly ask the architect and some of the other folks. I can get you that for your next meeting.
Yeah, I'd be curious as whether there's a difference in initial investment, and then operating costs, of course, vary between the type of power that you're using, and fossil fuel costs are only going to go up in the next decades. And I think the electricity costs and the use of renewable energies is only going to come down in the coming decades. So planning for that now, in the construction of buildings at this point in time, is good. Is this building going to have a flat roof, do you know? Or
Yes, it will be a flat roof.
perfect for solar panels, that would be
I'll
something.
bring that up to the architect.
I have solar panels on my roof at home. It's not a flat roof, and I can't cover the whole thing. I can only cover the face that is prominent for the sun. But I'm generating half my electricity through my solar panels. And cost-wise, I leased them for 20 years, paid the 20 years lease upfront, because it was lower per month if you did it that way. I had less than 6-year payback. Got all my money back in 6 years, and now all the electricity I'm being generated is just coming directly off of my electric bill. So it's, again, if you calculate, the way I did it was I calculated the full 20-year cost, not just today's cost. Of course, it cost me money to put on solar panels, but in the full 20-year cost, it was a cost savings to do that. And I think an architect designing something like this has to look at that type of thing as well, the payback of solar panels versus the continued, possibly growing costs of gas or oil for heating and stuff like that.
Isn't the payback, as I understand it, partially dependent upon what your particular utility will pay for excess power? Because normally they...
Depends on how it's installed. I have 1 meter. When I generate solar, my meter spins backwards. I get 100%.
100% what?
Cost. Whatever I'm paying for per kilowatt, that's what I get for every kilowatt I generate.
That's what you sell them back. But I understand that utilities are only obligated, they're obligated to buy back a certain amount of power, and once they get saturated with that, then, this is off the topic of conservation, and once they get saturated, then they don't have to pay as much, that they tend to reduce the rate at which they pay. They discount it because they're already buying they're saturated with their limit.
And part of that is these clean energy certificates, or whatever they're called nowadays, that when you generate, if I own the solar panels and didn't lease them, I would have to turn in these energy generation certificates based on how much I made, and the value of those fluctuates based on supply and demand.
Right.
So,
And some utilities actually will pay more. I believe Eversource, which is where we are here in Burlington, typically, usually, right now, they're paying, I think they're paying 13 cents a kilowatt hour to receive generated electricity.
exactly, I'm not sure, you know,
I
the
think-
total economics of how this system would work, but it's something that should be investigated.
Right.
So,
You might, I mean, a little bit off topic, but I know your staff's been involved in the Mass Municipal, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, and there's a report coming out soon. That might be one of the items you might want to take a look at, having some kind of regulatory bylaws. My clients will probably fire me now, but having regulatory bylaws or something like that that talk about how do you adopt this
Exactly.
as a regular type
Right.
aspect of any development project.
Cambridge is just doing that now. They're trying to come up with bylaws for the city of Cambridge to mandate certain performance criteria for new buildings. And I think not only is this good for the environment, but I think by taking the lead in this with some developers like yourself and BSC or Ionic Capital, you know, it could create excellent public image. It could generate goodwill, and it could even enhance community support for the project if it's properly, you know, presented as, look, we're going to be green, we're going to be leading the charge in saving the planet, and starting this revolution towards a new design, you know, criteria.
Well, the base benefit is if you are generating solar power, you reduce your operating costs, and the payback on the investment is after a few years, and then it's all net gain.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm experiencing.
And that makes an attractive situation for the owner.
Sure.
All right, so that you've heard my piece, and I appreciate
Okay,
that, and I would love to get whatever feedback you can provide,
I
yeah.
would be happy to try to do that.
And I would like to start some kind of a discussion with the planning board on that, too. I don't know how we go about it, but maybe we can talk about it.
It sounds like an offline discussion.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Jen, and then Ed.
I just have one question. You mentioned that sidewalks, and this probably doesn't fall under our jurisdiction, but by adding sidewalks, you'd be removing a number of trees.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if those trees
They're
fall under.
outside the buffer zone,
Okay.
unfortunately.
So I don't know if the person who owns the property would make a commitment to replace those trees elsewhere. I know we can't mandate that, but it would be nice.
I have not seen the final, I haven't seen the draft decision from the planning board.
Sure.
But the discussion was that I believe there are 4 trees. So the issue we have is, we don't know where the right-of-way is. We're going to have to survey that to find out what the right-of-way of Chestnut Ave is. We're going to put a 4-foot sidewalk in with vertical granite curbing. It'll be a cement concrete sidewalk. Handicap accessibility, we have to have, 42 inches, 3.5 foot. So eyeballing it, I'm sure at least 2 of these trees are going to have to come down. We may be able to squeeze by some of the other trees, so if we could, and if we're not going to create a situation in 5 years, the roots are going to wipe out the sidewalk, we have to have someone take a look at that. And I've talked with our landscape folks.
Okay.
So there are 4 trees, presuming they could be taken out. We have discussed replacing them with, maybe a 12 to 18-foot high, 2 to 3 inch caliper tree along there. Again, chosen so you don't set yourself up to, in 2 or 5 or 10 years, have the roots come up and wipe out the sidewalk in that area. So still a little bit up in the air, because if we don't have the right-of-way, then the town's going to have to negotiate to try to get the right-of-way, and will people do that? We're not sure. We could put it on the other side of Chestnut Avenue, but there's a bunch of commercial properties with sidewalks. The bus stop is on our side, so people will be crossing the street and the stop and going back. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And obviously, while my client's committing to pay for this through the design and the survey, the town needs to sort of be the one responsible, because we'll be working on town property. And that still needs to be worked out with the DPW engineering folks.
And of course, there'll be public hearings and the Public Shade Tree Act.
Oh, really?
Well, there's supposed to be.
Sometimes they nail the advertisement on the tree, which is not a good thing, but.
Okay. Ed, anything on
Just a
this?
clarification, on that backside where the drainage is, and you have that basin in the middle again, You'd mentioned earlier, there's an elevated, something by 2 feet? Is that
Oh,
whole backside
sure.
elevated?
So what happens is, because of the groundwater table, and with the certain elevations we have to maintain, and we had to get the volume we needed, our original design had probably on the order of a 0 to 5 or 6, maybe 7-foot wall. Because we had to raise this area to get that clearance from the groundwater and cover over our system, this is now from 0 to maybe 7 or 8 to maybe a 10-foot type wall, probably a modular block type wall in this area here. So we had to raise that up. This shifted this catch basin from about here down to here now, just because we had to have the grade go up. And then that area there, and again, we had to compress our infiltration system to get clearance away from the clay so that it would in fact work.
So that elevation there, plus the elevation on the front end here, that's like a dip in there, isn't it?
Right, so this area here is about 177. You're down to about 173 existing grade on Chestnut Ave. We go down to here to the low spot, go back up. This is about 176. The building is about 177 grade. 177, it goes up here. We're on 176 roughly through this area here.
So wintertime snows and whatnot won't be an issue.
No, they'll have to be plowed out of this area, but yes, that's correct. There will not be an issue.
Okay, I have 3 quick items. One is you raised your infiltrator up 2 feet so it could drain properly, and their wall was raised up a couple of feet. You just discussed that.
Yes.
It seems fairly close to the wall. Can you say with some confidence that the water is not going to break out to the sides? It looks like it's fairly close.
Yes.
Or should you give us a response or a write-up on that?
Sure, we can give you a response. The system we're using is open at the bottom.
Okay,
So the bottom is just below the wall.
okay.
I've had experience in town in the past about breakout through walls, so I'm sensitive to that along Cambridge Street.
Well, what I was going to say is if you think that it's close and going to happen, do you actually need, I don't know if the elevation supports it, a drainage swale at the bottom of the other side of the wall to carry the water, if it is going to break through?
I will look at that, we'll consider that. I don't think we do, but I will look at that, just to make sure.
I'd appreciate that, Frank. Thank you. That's number 1. Number 2, are you putting parking lot or future parking lot runoff into the infiltrator? And are you sufficiently removing the solids from the parking lot runoff from the infiltrator so it doesn't get clogged up?
Yes, so, we have sized infiltrator to include all the runoff from this area here. And we made the assumption saying that what happens if no infiltration occurs here? So we can take all the water from here and that can be put into the system, even though we're anticipating, certainly for the lower frequency storms, this should be infiltrating into the ground. Now, again, these are sea soils. Emily can talk about the soils that we saw when we did the test pits. These are not great sandy soils, so.
So what
we're not
about the
expecting-
solids off the parking lot? Are you sufficiently, so it doesn't get clogged up?
Yeah, so what we have here is we have, before any of the runoff from the pavement areas goes into the infiltrating system, we have water quality units, storm scepters that are appropriately sized. This is the storm scepter 900, this is a much larger storm scepter to pick up the runoff from all these areas here.
Are you using an isolator row at all, or it's not
So
necessary?
these are so these are basically big chambers,
Okay,
so we don't have an isolator row, but that should handle it. We have the maintenance that's going to be done on an annual basis in the
Sure.
area,
got it.
so we've covered that.
Good, thank you. And the third and last item is, the hydrology of the wetlands. It looks like the wetlands along the entire wetlands line is receiving a lot of overland flow down a slope. And it looks like you're concentrating most of the, in the corner there, it looks like you're concentrating most of the discharge, like a point discharge. So maybe I'm missing something. Are the wetlands going to receive enough hydrology where you're changing a lot of the sheet flow going down the hill in various places from the existing condition to a point discharge in the corner of the building there?
And again, I think go to the plan. Depending on the storm, we're getting anywhere from 40 to 60% of the direct runoff that would go. This is sort of, as I understand it, walking back, the runoff sort of flows in this direction. There's sort of a meandering channel back there. It's not a really good channel. A lot of it's flat. And somewhere down over here, going into Alma Road, there's a drain that goes out. Some of the neighbors at the planning board were worried that over time, more water is coming into their backyards and they're flooding more and more because we're getting more rainfall, but more severe storms. But anyways, and so they were concerned that too much water was coming in. We went back and forth on that. We're going to have the direct runoff in here. Our infiltration system is very, very close to the edge of the wetlands over in this area here. So certainly the runoff from almost all this area of the site goes into this area. That's where we have our infiltrator. There will be some runoff runs down here right now. When this is built, it will get redirected and go into this area. But even in here, the runoff goes into this area. So we're relatively close. The water that goes relatively slowly into the ground because of the poor soil, within 100 feet or less, we're getting into the wetland area. We didn't do a hydraulic evaluation of how fast water is going to move to the soils, but it won't take more than a day or two, maybe sooner than that, to that water to get into the site. What we thought was real interesting was the clay we hit over in here. It was down 3 feet maybe or something like that, 2.5 feet below the surface. And it was really nice clay. You could make those snakes really easily. You can see it was a bluish type clay, Boston blue clay. And so the other thing is, this was probably near that wasn't too badly disturbed. Historically, there was another building in here that burned down 25, 30 years ago. So I'm wondering how much goes into the ground in this area here. And again, I think we are reducing the runoff direct here, but we're putting it back in infiltration that will last a little bit longer than the runoff. So I don't think there'll be a change in hydraulic regime. The amount of water that flows on the site from a storm still gets there over time.
Which might be better for the flooding that the neighbors have, is what you're saying.
I think so. This is pretty overgrown. I have no idea what the culverts look like down here, and is that an issue or not.
Right.
I know the DPW did some changes downstream here on Wilmington Road to improve the drainage, but in this area, I don't know, so.
So to summarize, Frank, you're suggesting that 40% of the runoff is coming from other sources, not just that point discharge. It's coming from the bottom of the infiltrator and filtering in, and it shouldn't be enough, is what you're saying.
That's correct, yeah. I mean, it varies from storm to storm, but anywhere from 40 to 60% of that infiltration gets into the wetland system relatively quickly. So it should not change, or shouldn't have a significant change to the hydrology.
And if anything, given the nature of the soils, it's going to head laterally toward the wetlands anyway, from underneath the infiltration.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I understand. Okay. Okay, so the record should show there's nobody in the audience for this, please.
We invited them at every planning board hearing. We gave them names and dates and come, and nobody showed up at here or at the Board of Health meeting, so.
And, okay, well, that is continuing.
But they commented anyway.
Yeah, they did.
That's fine, they can watch it on television, certainly. All right, so what does that leave us for action items? Okay.
I'm going to do a little bit of investigating with the architect on the costs.
You're going to look at the a justification for not doing anything further with breakout from the wall?
Right.
Okay. Or you'll do something to fix it if you think you need it?
Yes.
Yeah. And you're going to look at a commitment to replace trees?
Right.
That's 3. Anything else? That's all I saw. Anybody hear anything else? No. Okay. So you have you folks have a short list?
Yes. Emily will be busy, starting tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. So should we continue the hearing until May
23rd?
May 23rd?
I think we certainly could get this information within the next week to you.
All right.
A week to review it.
Do you think we might be able to, didn't sound like a long list of stuff. You think we might be able to close?
Yes.
All right, so unless something comes up, we'll let you know, but it looks like we'll plan to close the hearing and issue as well.
All righty, and I'll be in contact with staff when we see the draft of the planning board decision. If there's anything that's pertinent, and they'll probably send you a copy anyways,
Right.
about 20 pages, but that's okay. So,
All right.
Motion?
Okay, is there a motion to continue the meeting until May 23rd for 328 to 330 Cambridge Street?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 600. All right.
thank you folks very much.
All right.
Five.
What's
Interest
it?
gone.
Oh, interest gone. Okay, 500. All right. All right, so you folks have a good evening.
Well, thank you.
Okay, planning board comments, is there anything further?
No.
Okay, subcommittee and staff reports, anything for town meeting we should be aware of coming up?
No.
Okay,
We firmed up a date, as you know, just kind of because I'd like to mention it, since we were concerned about stormwater and the Board of Health. We firmed up a date for a meeting with the Board of Health, between us, Board of Health, and whoever else wants to be there. Fred Sivian from the DEP, he'll talk to us about stormwater, LID, and the fact that we may have to change our bylaws to comply with the NIPT's MS4 requirement, and that requires LID to the greatest feasible extent. So it would be great to get us and the planning board
And
sort
Board
of
of
all
Health.
on the same
Board of
page.
Health.
we want to have the
Oh, Board of Health, sorry, Board of Health
on the same page,
page.
if we can come to some agreement on it.
So we set that for May 28th
Sure.
at 11 a.m. So it won't suit everybody, sorry, it had to be a daytime meeting.
Yeah, May 28th, 11 a.m. Where's it being held?
In the annex basement
Okay.
meeting room.
All right. Okay, next, we have, it's that time of year for reorganization. So I'd entertain nominations for chair and vice chair. Anybody?
Larry, Con,
Anybody?
and Bill.
In that order.
All right, whatever order you want.
Bill, would you like to chair it all?
No, I would not, thank you.
That's pretty clear. Anybody else? Any discussion?
Do you want to be the chair?
I'm happy to be the chair. I'm happy to give it to anybody who's,
So I make a motion to approve the slate.
So moved. Yeah.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? 500, okay. All right, thank you all for that. I'll just say, I've been doing it for a while. If anybody feels that they would like to chair at any time, you can call for an election, please do. I'm serious about that. No issues about that whatsoever.
So we can enact a coup if we need to.
A happy hostile takeover, really.
We're such a rowdy group. Yeah, for sure.
All right, upcoming meetings on May 23rd and June 13th. Other business.
Well, so on the calendar, so we discussed voting a summer schedule. I think it might be a good idea to just vote it permanently, rather than trying to remember every year, to vote permanently, to have one meeting in July, one meeting in August. You do it every year, so.
You could always undo it if there was a surge of business. I mean,
Yeah, you could call an extra meeting if necessary, but
All
sure.
right, could I have a motion to say the will of the commission is to have one meeting in July and one meeting in August on a permanent basis on the second Thursday of each of those months? Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. Okay, is there anything further?
I have one other item.
Yes,
Just
Bill.
a very brief item. I, force of habit, I go to our website and click on videos of previous meetings, and it still connects to the old link where the most recent meeting was December 18th.
Yeah, I haven't seen
December
that.
13th, so then I got to go back and get into,
BK.
BCAT and find, can we just change that link to go to the BCAT?
I thought it was going to
YouTube?
be cat, though.
It goes to the old
they're
data.
The
old.
BCAT changed
Give
they
them
must
last
have
year.
changed their address or something.
Yeah, now
We'll
now
look
it's a
into that.
We'll
direct
fix it.
link to the,
Or we'll
to the
figure
YouTube
something.
site, and you should be able to just link to that instead. It would just be, if somebody's looking for that link to work, it would be, give them the most recent meetings, not just the ancient ones.
Right.
Okay, is there anything further? Could I have a motion to adjourn this meeting, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that's it. Good evening.